Hello, my name is Eric Rugundu, and I work with associates in law firms to help them manage the stress of legal practice so they can feel confident about their career path. I've spent over 20 years working in the legal industry. A quarter of that time was spent working as a business development manager in law firms like yours, so I'm very familiar with the unique culture that comes with working in commercial law. With that in mind, I'd like to start by asking a specific question. Thinking about the culture in your own firm, how can you tell if one of your colleagues is struggling, but they don't want you to know? Allow me to repeat that. How can you tell if one of your colleagues is struggling, but they don't want you to know? I'm sure all of us have faced challenges in life that have kept us awake at night. Most of us put on a brave face the next morning and step out into the world. When we're asked, "How are you?" we give the customary response, "Fine," and hope there's no further questioning. I'd like to pause for a moment so we can put this scenario into context. Can I ask you to think of a recent personal challenge you've faced? Perhaps you're facing one right now. It could be a challenge to do with close personal relationships or an important decision you have yet to make. I wonder if the challenge you're thinking of is something you would share with your colleagues at work. The reality is, all of us have our own reasons for not sharing personal challenges at work, but most of us are motivated by two things: fear and shame. The fear of being judged and the shame of not being good enough. Thinking of your own recent personal challenges, perhaps you can also relate to the fear of being judged and the shame of not being good enough. My point is that when we don't want our colleagues to know that we are struggling, we do our very best to convince them that everything is fine. But everything is not fine. At this moment in your firm, there are lawyers on the brink of burnout who desperately need help, but they don't want you to know they are struggling because they are afraid of the consequences from that conversation. So, how can you tell if one of your colleagues is struggling, but they don't want you to know? This is the question that I'm going to explore today, because mental health in the legal profession is not getting better. It's getting worse, and those who are suffering are too afraid to tell you about it. I'm here to explain why some of your colleagues are too afraid to speak with you and what you can do about it. You may be wondering what my motivation is to be here talking to you about mental health in the legal profession. After all, I'm not a lawyer. During my years working as a law firm business development manager, I experienced how easy it is to acclimatize to a culture of excessive working. You can read my personal account of how I coped with occupational burnout on the LawCare website, but the short version is that I've experienced firsthand the toll that the legal profession can take on one's mental health. Another reason I'm here today is because recent events have shown us that this is a life and death issue. Vanessa Ford is the most recent tragic case of a lawyer who has lost their life through work-related stress. Countless others suffer life-changing consequences. These are not just statistics. These are our colleagues whose lives are being irrevocably altered by the pressures of our profession. We all know the stats on mental health in the legal profession are awful, but let's look at how they apply specifically to self-reporting on mental health. The 2024 ALM and Law.com survey on mental health in the legal profession provides these three sobering insights. Firstly, when asked, do you feel like your workplace is a safe environment to raise concerns about mental health? 37% said no. Let that sink in for a moment. Almost 40% of your colleagues don't feel safe talking to you if they have mental health concerns. Why? perhaps because of the fear of being judged and the shame of not being good enough I mentioned earlier. Here's the second survey question. Do you feel you could take extended leave from your employment to tend to your mental health issues? 64% said no. This means that 2/3 of your colleagues believe that even if they came to you for help, they wouldn't get what they want, which is an extended break from work. In other words, they don't believe that you can help them. Finally, and perhaps most tellingly, when asked, does your firm offer a leave policy that would support time off for treatment of mental health issues? 61% said, I don't know. This tells us that even if you already have a leave policy for mental health reasons, your colleagues are too afraid to even ask you about it. You might be doing your best to help your lawyers, but your efforts aren't getting through to them. These statistics paint a picture of a profession grappling with a significant mental health crisis. We all know we work in an extremely competitive industry with high levels of pressure requiring enormous amounts of resilience. But at what cost? Are we perpetuating a culture where being tough enough and able to hack it comes at the expense of our colleagues' well-being? This brings me to my personal pet peeve. We are often quick to label workplace stress as an industry-wide problem, but that's an evasive and unhelpful approach. Just because it's everyone's problem, that doesn't mean it's not your problem too. Next, I'd like to explore how this is not just an industry problem, but your problem too. As HR professionals, your role is to provide business services support to your firm in an increasingly competitive legal market. Here are 3 ways poor mental health is impacting your firm right now. Firstly, I'd like to talk about business impact. Fear of self-reporting is already impacting the productivity and quality of work from your lawyers. This affects your firm's current financial performance, making your position in the marketplace less competitive. Think about it. When your lawyers are struggling with their mental health, they're not operating at their best. But there's an even bigger concern here. Diminished decision-making may lead to poor legal advice with potentially catastrophic consequences for your clients. Imagine a lawyer, sleep-deprived and anxiety-ridden, overlooking a crucial clause in a contract or misinterpreting a key piece of legislation. The ramifications could be enormous, not just for the client, but for your firm's financials and reputation. Speaking of reputation, the second way poor mental health is impacting your firm is through reputational risk. If your law firm does not act on this issue, you are running the risk that the next acute mental health crisis, like the one Vanessa Ford suffered, could impact one of your lawyers. It's not a question of if, but when, and whether your firm will be the next to defend your well-being policies under public scrutiny. Even if your well-being policies are market-leading, questions will be asked how this could have happened in your law firm. In today's social media-driven world, news travels fast. A mental health crisis in your firm could quickly become national news, damaging your reputation in the marketplace for both clients and future talent. On the topic of talent, the third way mental health is impacting your firm is through talent retention. You all have extensive application processes for hiring your legal professionals. You and your HR colleagues work hard to ensure that only the best candidates are successful at gaining employment in your firm. But poor mental health lowers morale and increases your attrition rates. You are losing talented lawyers because they don't feel like they can talk to you. Think about the cost of replacing a senior associate, not just in terms of training investment, but also in terms of lost institutional knowledge and team morale. By perpetuating an environment where lawyers don't feel safe discussing their mental health concerns, you're potentially driving away your most valuable assets. I'd like to demonstrate how this is not just an industry-wide problem, but your problem too, by sharing a case study based on someone I've worked with in the past. I'm going to use the example of someone we'll call David. David is a high achiever who was recently promoted to senior associate in your corporate team. He's known for his sharp mind, attention to detail, and ability to handle complex cases. Lately, however, David has become withdrawn. His colleagues haven't noticed, but he's consistently the first one in the office and the last one to leave, often at his desk for extended periods. What his colleagues don't see is David at 3 a.m., his mind racing with thoughts of unfinished work, looming deadlines, and the constant fear that he's not doing enough. He's struggling to balance the demands of a high-profile merger with his responsibilities as a new father. His marriage is under strain, and he's starting to have panic attacks. But David doesn't tell anyone at work about this. He's afraid that admitting he's struggling will jeopardize his chances of making partner. So, he pushes himself harder, working longer hours, skipping meals, and neglecting his health. His work, despite the extra hours, is starting to suffer. He's making mistakes, missing deadlines, and his usually meticulous attention to detail is faltering. This is the cascade effect of poor mental health. It starts with stress and anxiety, leads to sleep deprivation and poor self-care, which in turn affects work performance, potentially impacting clients and ultimately threatening your firm's reputation. I wonder how many of you have encountered versions of David in the past, perhaps after it's too late. The chances are even his closest colleagues didn't see the signs. So what chance have you? Hopefully, seeing things from David's perspective helps you understand why he is so afraid to tell you that he's struggling. The Davids in your firm are suffering in silence. Their performance is declining and they're at risk of burnout or worse. And you, as HR professionals, are often the last to know. So, how can you tell if David is struggling, but he doesn't want you to know? The answer is, you won't be able to tell because David is too afraid to tell you. As described in my introduction, David is like most of us. He puts on a brave face every day and does his very best to convince you that everything is fine, to avoid the fear of being judged and the shame of not being good enough. When I've encountered versions of David, they often have a perception that their HR team exists to protect the interests of the firm. So if lawyers won't talk to their HR professionals, what can you do to help them? The more pertinent question is, who will lawyers like David talk to? This is why I'm advocating for independent support. Your lawyers need 3 things. Someone independent of the firm with no influence over their career prospects. This creates psychological safety, allowing them to open up about their challenges. Secondly, someone who understands the pressures they are under and the isolation they feel. This establishes rapport and builds trust. And thirdly, someone who can help them find solutions specific to their unique circumstances. This gives them what they want most, a way to get back to their best. That someone is a coach like me, with an understanding of the competitive culture in commercial law firms and my own personal experience of receiving mental health support. Here are 3 ways that working with me can help the Davids in your firm. Firstly, my work with lawyers is governed by the International Coaching Federation Code of Ethics, which means my sessions are confidential. My clients know they can be open and honest with me without any concerns about how our sessions might affect their career prospects. Also, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm in no position to judge them on how they are handling the pressures of legal practice. Secondly, we are all familiar with the unique challenges that come with working in a law firm partnership structure. Having experience and an understanding of what it's like to navigate within a high-pressure commercial law firm environment gives me the ability to build rapport with my clients. It means we can get to the heart of the issues faster because we're already on the same page. And thirdly, I help my clients find well-being solutions that are tailored to their unique circumstances. As you have likely experienced with your own well-being programs, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to mental health. As Carl Jung said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. I help my clients identify the personal stresses and coping strategies for their specific circumstances. By offering access to coaching, you're not just providing a support system. You're sending a powerful message that your firm values the mental health and well-being of its employees. You're also creating a culture where it's okay to admit that you're struggling, and where seeking help is seen as a strength, not a weakness. As I wrap up, I want to leave you with 3 key takeaways. Firstly, you won't know when lawyers like David are struggling because they are too afraid to tell you. Remember, the 2024 ALM and Law.com survey on mental health in the legal profession found that almost 40% of your colleagues don't feel safe talking to you about their mental health concerns. Secondly, improving well-being culture by providing access to coaching in your firms will increase productivity and reduce attrition rates. When your lawyers are operating at their best, it gives your firm a competitive advantage over others. And thirdly, coaching with me gives your lawyers access to independent, confidential, and non-judgmental support that allows them to voice their mental health concerns with confidence and without consequence. I help my clients find well-being solutions that are tailored to their unique circumstances. The mental health crisis in the legal profession is real. It's serious and it's happening in your firm right now. But you have the power to make a difference. By creating a supportive culture and providing resources like coaching, you can help your lawyers thrive both professionally and personally. Remember, a mentally healthy workforce is a productive workforce. It's not just the right thing to do for your employees, it's the right thing to do for your business. I invite you to view coaching not as an expense, but as an investment in your firm's most valuable asset, your people. It's an investment that will pay dividends in increased productivity, reduced attrition, and a stronger reputation in the legal marketplace. In closing, don't wait for the next acute mental health crisis to happen in your firm. Some of your lawyers are already suffering in silence, so contact me today to discuss how we can implement a coaching program tailored to fit your firm's needs. Every day you delay is another day someone like David is struggling alone. Let's work together to create a legal profession where everyone can thrive. Connect with me on LinkedIn and message me to get started.